My main man, Charles Robinson. It feels like it's been forever. It's only been 2 weeks since I saw that face of yours. Missed you last week, but it feels like it's been forever because an awful lot has happened. Starting in your neck of the woods, you are in Houston. How on fire is that city behind this quarterback, CJ Stroud, who has gone from the last time we talked, I believe, about CJ Stroud, we were comparing him to his classmates in the 2023 draft. Then the is he top 10 right now conversation took off. Now today, there's MVP talk about the second overall pick halfway through his first season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the fan base here, after the entire Deshaun Watson saga, I don't think they felt like they had any hope how often does a good quarterback come along for any particular franchise? You don't replace one good quarterback with another and another. And yet Stroud has been everything he was billed to be by the organization and more. And it was interesting because going through the preseason, he didn't look great. I mean, there was a question coming into the season, like, is Stroud going to start or is it going to be Davis Mills? People forget that it was a rough preseason for him. And a lot of the talk was, and I, people in the organization where I'm like, is this a clean pocket issue? Like, does he have to have a clean pocket to play well in the NFL? And no, it's been quite the opposite. He's dealt with offensive line issues. He has not always had a clean pocket. And yet has just been absolutely stellar. To me, what ended up being the most truthful about him was the stats, the tools that he showcased, but really the Georgia game and then how he worked out going into the draft. And we got all caught up on the S2 scores. Oh, the S2, like he's, and he said, "What? I'm a football player, not a test taker." Yeah. Like that turned out to be completely true. So people here are elated. I mean, between Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, it's like a night and day difference when you talk about what the organization looked like and how it was being absorbed by fans when it was going through the muck of the Deshaun Watson situation, all the the coach firings and all this. It's the polar opposite of where that was.
So I'll tell you what I did not have on my bingo card for the 2023 season is week 11, looking forward to Texans Cardinals. I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in that game, and not just because the Cardinals own the Texans 2024 first, which is looking worse and worse thanks to DeMeco Ryan, CJ Stroud and company. But they own that pick because that's what the Texans used to draft Will Anderson. So I want to kind of focus on those two organizations, specifically Stroud to start. I wonder, because a lot of people give credit, sort of, retroactively, they give thanks to Lovie Smith and Davis Mills for costing the Texans the number one overall pick. They would probably say, you'd never get anybody to say anything other than CJ Stroud was the top quarterback on their board. But a lot of people frame it as though, thanks to the Texans winning their last game of last season, the Texans ended up with number 2 and took the quarterback that the Panthers passed on. We'll get to the Panthers in a moment. My question to you is, as much as you know about that Texans organization, would they have taken Stroud if they'd ended up with the number 1 pick?
I actually don't think so. And I got to be careful what I talk about here, but there were things that they were doing prior to the draft that suggested to me they wanted to be sure that Stroud was the quarterback there at number 2. And I mean, like, I would put it to you this way. I don't think people in the organization were, especially when the S2 stuff came out, right, about Stroud, and which I think began this idea of like maybe he slips in the draft. The Texans, they weren't. I don't think the Texans were out there beating it back as hard as they could have behind closed doors in terms of like when people would ask about this S2 stuff. If you really want Stroud to be there at 2, and you don't want the Panthers to take him at 1, what do? You just go, I don't know. That's two stuff. That's interesting. You know, you don't. But if you, I guess I don't want to say they wanted Stroud to fall, but they wanted Stroud to fall. That's how it felt. It felt after the pick like it was a team that was hoping he was going to end up being there at number 2. Now, will we ever know the full story? No, we won't, because as you said, I mean, in retrospect, everybody can say they liked Stroud better when all the indications we heard were absolutely like Bryce Young's the guy. And by the way, Bryce Young may still be fine. But yeah, I think the organization, I think the Texans, if they really wanted Stroud off the board at 1, they could have beaten the living crap out of that S2 stuff and been like, no, that's absolute, like, that's just garbage. He's this great player and all this stuff. And I don't think they did that. And I think part of the reason they did that is because they knew they wanted him to be there for them at 2. It's a conspiracy theory on my part, but I always wondered.
About to say, were they the source of those leaks? I mean, because that's always the theory. Always the theory is that the teams that are putting out the negative information because they want a player to fall. So,
well, I mean, look, I'm not going to say they're the source of the leaks. I can just tell
but you're not going to not say that they're
because I don't you know, all I know is in my experience, I don't feel like they went hard in the paint to convince me that Stroud was the best quarterback in the draft. And then they drafted him, and it wasn't until they drafted him that I looked back and went, like maybe there's a reason why they weren't trying to convince me that he was the best quarterback in the draft.
So your gut tells you. So your gut tells you, had they not won their last game last year and they got the number 1 pick, A, they keep it, and B, your gut tells you that they take C.J. Stroud.
I think they wanted Stroud. That's how, in retrospect, thinking of the conversations that I had with them, and I didn't realize at the time, it wasn't until after they had taken him, and it kind of refocused in my mind, like, what were those conversations like? And you know, you go back and you read through old texts and things, and you're like, okay, this feels a little bit different than I expected. Yeah, and you just don't. And I do think that's real, by the way, what you say about teams do, if they have a preferred player, particularly if it's a quarterback, and it's an either or. You know, if you're sitting there and it's 2 quarterbacks at the top of the board, and you know you want one, you're gonna try to get that player into your hands. You're not just gonna sit idly by and be like, oh well, you know, our chosen guy might not be there.
Well, easily the biggest loser in this whole post-draft process is the S2 test. Probably has zero credibility at this point moving forward. Anytime somebody brings it up, they'll be like, I don't know about that. Look at C.J. Stroud. Okay, but now conversely, Carolina, who I just saw on Thursday night, I just had to endure Carolina, Chicago, and I want to talk to you about the Bears as well. But the Panthers still maintain that A, they were unanimous in selecting Bryce Young number 1. B, they have no regrets, not even one letter, no regrets about C.J. Stroud, about taking Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud. And what's also interesting is, and I'm sure you've heard some of the same things, is they look at Bryce Young's struggles as less about Bryce and more about what they don't have around Bryce, both in terms of his protection, his receiving core, running game, consistency in terms of offensive philosophy and play calling. But also they believe that if you reverse these 2 players, which is interesting considering what we were talking about the Texans going into the season and the weapons that C.J. Stroud didn't have and how beat up his offensive line was. But in this moment, and I'm sure he's getting help from his teammates now. We probably underestimated them and underrated them. But the Panthers believe that if you were to switch these 2 players, that Bryce Young would be thriving. Maybe not at a record-setting pace, but that he would be doing well if he had the type of support that C.J. Stroud is getting now. You could say that's convenient if you want. Just telling you how the Panthers think, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing. I guess what I wonder, just in your opinion, Charles, it's only a half a season in, and Bryce Young may still, as the Panthers believe, be the best quarterback in the long run. But are we already past the point, given what C.J. Stroud has done and how he's looked so far, are we already past the point of the benefit of the doubt? In other words, like, is it pretty clear that Bryce Young ain't the best guy of this lot? Because even Anthony Richardson we saw enough from him in a flash to put him ahead of Bryce Young, even though he got hurt. He hadn't stayed on the field. We talk about Bryce Young's durability. Anthony Richardson's the one that didn't stay on the field. But are we already past the part of comparison, just going back to that? Like, it just feels like, yeah, that ship has sailed. Like, Stroud was the guy. Doesn't mean Bryce can't be good, but Stroud was the guy in this class.
Yeah, let's relax a little bit. Okay. It's half a season. Okay. And I say that because what did we think of Mac Jones coming out of his rookie year? Right? Like, the Patriots solved it. They got their guy. He might be the best quarterback in this draft. All these different things. And then it's steadily fallen apart around him and fallen off. And I think that, Stroud's the rookie of the year. I don't think there's any question about that. It's probably going to be a Pro Bowler. Maybe get some All-Pro and MVP votes.
Or MTV. They still got MTV awards,
votes,
right?
Yeah. I mean, let's give it some time. Let's
it's a
see
marathon.
what it looks like let's see what it looks like when Bryce Young has a team built out around him. How many touchdowns did Baker Mayfield throw as a rookie? 27? Wasn't it like 27? It was a lot. He threw a lot of touchdowns as a rookie. How many interceptions did Peyton Manning throw?
Probably would have had Baker Mayfield as a rookie ahead of Josh Allen or even Lamar Jackson for that matter, right?
Absolutely. I think maybe not Lamar. I mean, Lamar obviously came out of the box looking pretty good too, but at least in the
his
respect
second
of
year.
Josh Allen.
Remember Lamar, his first year, he came in late in the year. Remember, and he wasn't throwing it very much.
That's right.
Yeah, his second year is when Lamar took off. Yeah,
it's funny because I remember it being like instantaneous. But you're right, Flacco. I forgot there was the Flacco debate early on. But yeah, I mean Baker probably in that class. But again, look at Peyton Manning. He threw 30 plus interceptions somewhere around there his rookie year, and
high
it's
20s.
just,
yeah.
I mean, it was up there. I think he still holds the rookie record for interceptions as a rookie. To me, you just let the Panthers figure it out. I do think when we compare the skill set, the skill position players around each, the Texans did a really good thing to go and get Dalton Schultz. He's been a very good tight end for them. I think listening to CJ Stroud, who said draft Tank Dell, was a really smart thing to, and everyone else is out there sitting there going, I mean, I remember watching the guy at the Senior Bowl. He destroyed guys. He put everybody in a blender. It was crazy. But then when you talk to teams about him, they're like, is he going to play at like 165? Like you can't. Can you have a player come out and thrive at the wide receiver position who's going to be, around the 160 mark? And then look at what he's done. I mean, he's been exquisite for them. So you have to ask yourself, is that a function of how good CJ Stroud is? Is that why these guys around him are balling out? Maybe, and if Bryce Young's in there, maybe these guys don't look as good. But I would tend to agree that if you look at the skill position players on both sides, I would lean into what Stroud has around him. He's got a better running back. I think he's got, Nico Collins is healthy. I think he's got better wide receivers. And
offensive line has played better.
Offensive line, despite being banged up, has played better. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And whereas like the Panthers, I mean, it's everything about the two situations is very dissimilar. The Panthers line is not performed at all well. The skill positions are devoid of talent, or at least the top shelf talent they'd like. And they got a Sean
McVay disciple. You got a Sean McVay disciple calling a Frank Reich offense. It's just he's not being set up to succeed. Don't get me wrong. I'm in no way declaring that Bryce Young is a bust after a half a season. What I'm talking about, it just speaks more to. I'm wondering, is Stroud just this good? Like I'm struggling to remember, and I'm prisoner of the moment, struggling to remember a better rookie season, a rookie quarterback who looked more like a veteran this quickly. Because even if you want to go statistically, and I'm barely old enough to remember Marino. I know Marino looked like he belonged, in '83, his first year. But if you want to go statistically, for a while, it was Ben Roethlisberger. was the gold standard for rookie quarterbacks, but they won a lot of games with a running game and a defense. And hey, Ben, don't lose it, make plays here and there. I know Matt Ryan and the aforementioned Joe Flacco both had very successful rookie years, but I don't remember a guy being him right out the gate the way C.J. Stroud has been. Like I said, Bryce Young could still be very good, but it feels, you know what it feels like to me, and tell me if you agree with this. It feels like Bryce Young is more of the type of guy that is, if things are great around him, can bring out the best in everybody with his skill set, whereas C.J. Stroud seems to have that ability to elevate the players around him. With all due respect to both Bryce Young and to the supporting cast of C.J. Stroud. You think that's a fair comparison? Or a fair way to put it, or maybe too soon to say that?
Personnel, people call it the trucks versus trailers, is like C.J. Stroud's the truck. He pulls you along. Yeah. And Bryce Young maybe is the trailer where, he's functional and he's good, but he also has to be pulled by the surrounding pieces around him. So, I mean, I would say in the early going, it looks like Stroud is definitely. I don't remember a rookie season ever like this, and I remember the Roethlisberger season in particular because it was so stunning the amount of success they were having and how good he looked. Yeah. But as you said, it was functionally a run-dominated offense. It was a defense. It was a defensive team. There are all these things that are very dissimilar to what the Texans are. The Texans are a passing team. And not only, they are a big time passing team.
Downfield, yes.
No, it's not. It's not. There's a lot of air yards. There's a lot of like 10 plus air yards. Here's what his throws are. And it's like, when you look at it, you're like, geez, half of his attempts are like 10 plus throws, in terms of like air yards, which is very different than a lot of offenses run in the NFL now. I would say in the early going, absolutely, Stroud looks like a guy who's able to carry a franchise, put him on, and he is doing that in some respects. But I also want to be, I want to be fair to DeMeco Ryans. I want to be fair to the Texans' defense, which has been really good. Yeah. They're the aggression, the tenacity. They
look just like 49ers-esque. They're flying around.
They look faster. Yeah, they look faster. Yeah. Their mentality looks different. It is a seismic shift in almost everything that they have put on the football field, both offensively and defensively. But I would say that Stroud so far, and again, we're talking about half a season, probably represents that Marino type of player where you watch him and you go, uh-oh, like this is like he looks like he's in year 5, not in year 1. He looks comfortable. When you listen to him, he had this moment too where he was reciting. It was like 2 games ago. He was reciting the last drive, their last game-winning drive, and off the top of his head, he was like, "And then this happened, and this guy did this, and this guy did that." And when you overlaid it with the tape, you're like, he literally just described every single play and exactly how it unfolded, including other guys who weren't necessarily catching the football, how the whole thing unfolded. And I had somebody text me in the league. They texted me the clip. And they're like, check this out. They're like, and then they just started banging on the S2. They're like, I guess the S2 doesn't matter so much when you got a guy who can think like this. And it's amazing what he's doing. But I think it's just because I've covered the league so long that I always try to be a little cautious about because I remember the Mac Jones thing, watching him as a rookie, and I'm like, I can't believe this. Like they freaking replaced Brady with a guy who might not be Brady, but he looks like he's going to be a great quarterback, and then that just completely went off a cliff. And
I want to talk to you about Mac as well, that very cliff. But you know what Bryce Young is? A rookie quarterback. Just like most rookie quarterbacks who get drafted into bad situations, especially when a team gave up what the Panthers gave up in order to get Bryce Young, and they struggle out of the gate for their first season or 2. Some of them don't even start right away. C.J. Stroud, he's the outlier. Yes, we used to.
We used to accept that. And like now it's like it's crazy because even like Josh Allen, like if you go back, Josh Allen's first year was objectively bad. Like it was bad. Year 2 was still pretty not great. Yeah. He took a step, but still in year 2, you're like, ugh. And then year 3 blossoms and really becomes, what he is now. And but it's just there's no patience anymore for I think coaching staffs, I think especially quarterbacks, it's just,
patience. Well, that's the question I want to ask you. I think if there were a competition for least amount of patience in the NFL, David Tepper would be right up there. How patient do you think he is or is going to be with this group, and Frank Reich in particular, if they don't manage to, especially with C.J. Stroud applying pressure from Houston, if you will?
Right.
It's like, hey, why is my guy not doing this? What are we doing on offense where we could barely score points?
It's tough that they have a comparison, right? I mean, weighs on Bryce Young. It weighs on the coaching staff there, that you had two guys available to you. You chose this one, and now you're watching the other one ball out, and you're constantly going to have these two guys compared against each other because of the draft positioning. But I would say that when you look at the organization, the one thing, remember, like, Scott Fitterer is still there. So the general manager. So, Tepper makes all these moves. He ultimately ends up, makes a coaching change. Scott Fitterer, the general manager, stays in-house. And really what you hear in the building is, okay, we got 3 years to figure out the clock is now running. It's going to be 3 years. Get the quarterback situation resolved, and not like resolve it in year 3. Have it up and running on a high level in year 3. Well, when you talk to people inside the building, and some that aren't no longer inside the building in Carolina, what they'll tell you is Tepper. They call it, like, I had a guy call it Tepper time. Tepper time. Cut it in half. He's like, whatever he says, you can take that and cut it in half. So if he's told you got 3 years, you got a year and a half to get this figured out and up and running. Right. So I think the staff is okay. But if Tepper is going to blame someone, I mean, who's left really to blame that's not himself? I would guess he would look at the general manager and say, well, geez, you're still the guy who's here from the past regime, and which I don't agree with.
That was more Matt Rule. Yeah, like wasn't Rule picking the players, and didn't he kind of have one of the place?
I would not put, like, Scott Fitterer, like, this is especially when like some deals that they didn't make that they should have made, and I think that Fitterer was behind, like him, like he wanted to make these deals, and ultimately it was Tepper who squashed it. I mean, they had Matt Stafford at one point. I think they could have gotten him. They had a deal, pretty much worked out at the Senior Bowl, and then Tepper got nervous about Stafford's back, and that blew that up. I think Tepper pushed in way too hard early on Deshaun Watson, and to be completely honest with you, I think everybody else in the building is like, I don't know if we want to give up this kind of draft assets and all this stuff that's going on. And ultimately, I think kind of worked out for him. I mean, maybe the situation is different for Deshaun in Carolina or whatever. I think the staff's going to be fine for 2024, right? You're going to get another year out of this. And frankly, if Tepper were to pull the plug, then at that point, it's clear he's just a bad owner at that point. You can't constantly keep churning the decision makers in your building and expect it to be a good thing, both for your organization and especially your quarterback. Leave some continuity in place, let the kid grow, add some pieces, address some other problems, and see where this takes you in 2024.
No, I agree. I would just say, though, I just wonder. It's like defensively, they've been very competitive. Special teams, solid. But it's just like offensively, if you hire a head coach and his specialty is offense, and your problem is offense, and you've gone back and forth in terms of systems and play calling and calling. It's like, I think to me, if anybody should be nervous in Carolina right now, given like, hey, the personnel plan is going to take 2 or 3 years, again, given what they had to give up to get Bryce Young, I think if anybody should be nervous, even in his first year, it might be the head coach, just because the offense, his side of the ball, has been so bad. Now, back to Week 11's marquee matchup, at least for purposes of this conversation, Texans versus Cardinals. Welcome back, Kyler Murray. Cardinals have never played like a tanking team. You can question, trading Josh Dobbs and starting Clayton Tune, but at least on the field, they've been competitive. They've been spunky. They've shown some fight. Kyler Murray looked like he came back, didn't miss a beat. They beat the Falcons. they may end up playing themselves out of contention for the number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, it's like there was a lot of people pegging them, for Caleb Williams or Drake May, if you prefer. But it's like, no, like Kyler Murray was the number 1 pick. This doesn't seem like, obviously it's not the next year, but it doesn't seem like Josh Rosen all over again, where it's like, oh, no, we're going to hit the reset button and get another one. It's like, no, he showed and reminded everybody that he could still be the guy if you build around him properly. Do the Cardinals see it that way? Do they see Kyler Murray as their long-term future? And there was a whole lot of smoke but no fire behind the Caleb Williams speculation.
I think they absolutely told the truth. When I went through there in camp and I talked to Jonathan Gannon, I talked to Monty Ossenfort, and I asked them, let me see how they answered the Kyler Murray question. I know how they're going to answer it, but I can tell if you want. I mean, I feel like I have a pretty good read on, is this BS? Or are you just saying what you have to say?
You've been around long enough.
Yeah. And when I asked Gannon about Murray, I mean, he was like forceful in his answer. Like he just was like, look, he is absolutely, we're getting this guy on the field. Absolutely. He's our guy. And like, he straight up told me that he told everybody else in the locker room, like, if you're not on board with this guy, you're going to be gone. Like, this is going to be our guy. When he's healthy, he's going back out there. He's our leader. He's our quarterback. Awesome for his part. And I do think you should be like this as a general manager. Awesome for it's like, yeah, that's our guy. But there's a measurement process. We're going to see. What does this all look like? I think they both agreed, though, the best case scenario is Murray coming out and convincing them, yeah, he's our franchise quarterback. Yeah, because now you don't have to put yourself through salary cap hell, trying to part company with him. Now you don't have to, take a shot on another rookie quarterback, which, hey, who knows? I mean, like, we think Drake May is going to be great. We think Caleb Williams is going to be great. We think, let's go back to the whole Bryce Young conversation, that we're having now. But, going into that draft, he's can't miss. He's the guy. Everybody will put him number 1 on the board. So, yeah, I think this is what they want. I think if they go on a run here and they win games and they look at Kyler Murray and say, we have our solution in house, they're actually happy with that. I think they're fine with that.
Yeah.
And they had a really good draft. They had a free agency period where they let guys go. Like, they just cleaned out a lot of the roster. And to have that out of the way with the quarterback, and maybe for Kyler Murray to think, I am getting a little bit of a fresh start with these guys, because it definitely was not feeling so great, prior to Cliff being fired. Things were not going in a good direction for me inside the organization. I think it's actually the best world that the Cardinals could live in for Kyler to rip off some wins and showcase. And by the way, we both watched him. He was rusty. Like, he was not. He looked like Kyler, but you could tell, you're like, okay, he's going to work himself back into like where he was.
Sure. Athletically.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
he looks special.
No question. Yeah, he looks special.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, he's a different kind of runner. You know what I mean? He's not the fastest, certainly not the biggest, but as elusive and as frustrating to defend as anybody, but also just fun to watch. And it was good to see him back, and he didn't seem to hold back. No. He seemed fearless, but
he looked like somebody who wanted to be out there, right? Like, that was the thing,
right?
And
a lot of the criticism of Kyler was always like off the field, and not even off the field in terms of a behavior, but a commitment, a work ethic. How well is he liked within the locker room? How do guys play with him and for him? But maybe that fresh start is exactly what he needed, just like you said. But you know who sounds like that, though, when you talk to him? He's not coming off an ACL, but he's out with the thumb. That's how the Bears sound with Justin Fields. Like, they say all the right things, and here they are, controlling the top of the draft with their pick, which they hurt Thursday night, but the Panthers pick, which they helped on Thursday night. And so they could be in prime position to reset around the quarterback if they so choose. But if you were in Ryan Poles' shoes, just given what he inherited, because I was looking at this going into that game, given what he inherited, given how much he had to reset, reboot, and replenish that roster, that cupboard was bare, as they say. it feels like, especially looking at what the Panthers are going through, it feels like the best move would be to continue to build the roster for a quarterback to be successful rather than go back to that QB well again. Or is Caleb Williams / Drake May just that special? Or is it just too soon to tell? And are they in that measuring process still that you talked about with the Cardinals? Does that make sense?
I think, yeah, it does. I think it's a different process for the Bears because, look, Kyler Murray, albeit it was a compact amount of time, we have seen him play at nearly an MVP level for a period.
Yeah.
There was a pocket of time where you're like,
they've won games with him.
He can. Right.
Which they haven't done with Justin Fields.
Right.
They've not won with Justin. Yeah.
They've gone on big winning streaks. They've had times where he looked dominant as a playmaking quarterback. They've seen him reach certain heights. I would argue that we have not with Fields, particularly in, let's say, an 8-game run, like where everything comes together. Kyler has had an everything come together stretch. Justin Fields has not. And so with the Bears, the measurement becomes, can he do it? Number one, do we truly believe he can put it all together? How long is that timeline? What does he need around him to help him do that? And then finally, then I think you ask, is there a quarterback, if let's say they have the first pick, is one of these quarterbacks better? Is he just simply do we believe he's a better player, a better quarterback than Justin Fields? Yeah. Now you have the simplicity of not having a long-term contract in place with Justin Fields. Like it's with Kyler, you to separate yourself, you got to go through some pain. Fields, you don't. You just got to find someone who still believes in him. And I think they would get an asset out of him that, wouldn't be a situation where you're trading him for nothing. And so it's just, those are it's just two different measuring sticks, I think, for the franchise. Let me ask you this about the Bears, though.
Yep.
So if you're the Bears, let's say you end up with, let's have fun with it and say you end up with 1 and 3, right? The first and third pick, something like that, right?
All right. Patriots in between.
right. And so let's say you're going to stick with Fields. Now I will try to entice you with this. If you're an organization, we all know, like if you're in the building mode, offensively, what do you want? Star quarterback, high-end left tackle, and then a superstar receiver, right? You absolutely want to have those 3 things. So let's say you go out and you draft Marvin Harrison, right, at 3. Let's say the quarterbacks, go 2. And then let's say you move out of 1 and you take one of the tackles, right? The Penn State kid, the Notre Dame kid. Those are the 2 big left tackles everybody will talk about. So now you have, boom, you got your left tackle, you got your quarterback that you believe in, you got a superstar wide receiver to add to DJ Moore. And then defensively, you kept your corner. You didn't deal him, Jalen Johnson, right?
Yep. You just got an edge rusher.
You just went and got Montez Sweat, right? So from a foundational building block standpoint, you now have edge rusher, cornerback, left tackle, quarterback, wide receiver.
All those boxes checked.
Yeah, you're looking pretty good. And by the way, if you trade out of 1, you have additional draft assets because someone's going to pay through the nose, I believe, to get up to number 1, right? So
yeah.
I think
you and I think alike.
A pretty good spot. Yeah.
That's how I would build it. But it's interesting, though, too, because we talk about the Panthers passing on Stroud. Let's not forget, so did the Bears. Like, if Stroud turns out to be a superstar, the Bears, they traded out at number 1 to begin with, but they had so many holes to fill, not enough capital to do it. I'm with you. That's how I would play it, because to bring this conversation kind of full circle, we talk about being patient with quarterbacks, and we talk about not deciding on quarterbacks quickly. And some may argue that I've seen enough of Justin Fields. Like, Justin Fields had plenty of opportunity to prove himself. Okay, maybe, but he hasn't had a great team around him either, or even a good team around him, a good roster around him. Like, this was a rebuild with the quarterback already drafted and in place by the previous regime. So if we're saying on one hand with Bryce Young, he doesn't have receivers, he doesn't have protection, doesn't have a running game, play calling has been, questionable or inconsistent at best. Like with Justin Fields, can you really say that Justin Fields had every opportunity to succeed? He's been hurt. There's been some, or if he has had every opportunity to succeed, has he had time to develop the way we used to give quarterbacks time to develop? So if I'm the Bears, I'm looking at the Panthers, I'm looking out throughout NFL history at every quarterback who has succeeded or failed, and the through line to me among the failures, quote unquote, is their circumstances. Was there consistency with coaching? Especially on the offensive side of the ball. Did they have a defense? Did they have a running game? Were they protected? 9 out of 10 times, it's like a lot of it has to do with just the circumstances. I'm trying to put whatever quarterback is there in the best set of circumstances. On the flip side, though, Charles, this is me talking out of both sides of my mouth. This is why I probably shouldn't be a general manager, because I wouldn't be able to make a decision and live with it. Remember Entourage? Remember one of the first few episodes of Entourage when Ari was telling Vince, you know what kills your career? Passing. When you're trying to get him to do Matterhorn, it's like, that's what kills your career is passing.
Right.
If Caleb Williams is that guy, or Drake May for that matter, is that guy, and they're better. I remember, because you know why, man? And I remember killing the Cardinals. I was like, what the F are y'all doing? Y'all just took Josh Rosen with the 10th pick of the draft. He had 1 year. What are y'all doing taking a quarterback number 1 overall? That is malpractice. I think Josh Rosen is on somebody's practice squad now. I don't even know if he is on a practice squad at this point. And they seem to have done the right thing by trading for Kyler Murray. I guess the word, Charles, is conviction. Whatever direction you choose, you better have conviction about it.
Well, that's exactly it, Mike. But I remember the Cardinals going through that process, and they believed. They just believed. They're like, we've seen what Josh offers us. This guy is a better quarterback. And I remember having a conversation with not just like a GM. I mean, it was a conversation. I remember that entire offseason having all these conversations with coaches and GMs and other personnel people about like, you always get better at quarterback. If you have an opportunity to get better at quarterback, you get better at quarterback. And that owners were asking the question, is this a Super Bowl winning quarterback? Do I have a Super Bowl winning quarterback on my roster? Is this who you see when you look at our quarterback? If the answer is no, we need to move on. There needs to be someone else. And I'll give you an example of that. And again, maybe to his detriment, when Teddy Bridgewater ended up going to Carolina, right? David Tepper almost instantaneously after one season, he was just like, this isn't the guy. Like, it's not the guy. You sold me on him being the guy. He's not the guy. We have to go try to find the guy elsewhere. And I do think, even though I just said, hey, you want continuity and patience, if you have, as you said, that conviction, this is definitely the better player, and it's not close, I don't think it's a degree or two, then there's a different kind of a conversation. But if he is clearly a level up from your quarterback, then that's an entirely different conversation. Yeah. However, and this is me speaking out of both sides of my mouth too.
Okay, good. I'm not alone. we make a good scouting department, me and you.
Okay, so the Bears, the way you and I want to build the Bears, right? Put all these. Remember, if you build it all out and Fields doesn't work, it is a day and age when you can go out and try to get another. You can go get a veteran. You can trade. Teams will trade superstar, level veterans to situations.
Or the next one that comes up through the draft. Or the next one comes up through the draft. You got a situation where you can succeed.
And I'll give you an example of this. The Minnesota Vikings. Now, if Dobbs makes it there, pretty good situation. But whoever goes into the Vikings offense as quarterback is sitting in a very, very good situation. You have a really good left tackle. You have 2 wide receivers, right? Young guys. You have a tight end. You have, it's a beautiful situation for whoever ends up in Minnesota. And that might be Josh Dobbs. I mean, if the last 2 games are a glimpse of what, like, this dude does this in 12 days there, and you're in a Kevin O'Connell, which is a Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan offense. And this guy is brilliant, and he grows into this and gets an opportunity there, which every other stop, he's never gotten every time he's gotten a starting shot. This is what's crazy about Josh Dobbs' career. It was an emergency. Like, the Titans are like, we need to come to the last 2 games of the season. We lost. Oh my God. So we sign him off the Rockets practice squad. And then this is your 2 game shot. Oh my God. And then the Cardinals are like, oh my God, we need a quarterback. It's almost the season's about to kick off. Let's go get Josh Dobbs and make him our starter. It was an emergency. Kirk Cousins goes down. Oh my God, we got a quarterback. Send us Josh Dobbs. And I'm like, good God, like this guy is
right.
Give him a chance to just acclimate, grow into something.
Yeah.
Maybe he's going to be a special piece there for him. So, but that's my thing with the Bears. If you fail at Fields, but you build around him, you do have outs down the line. It is that kind of league now where you can go and get an Aaron Rodgers or whoever and be able to turn the key.
Yeah. Or you end up like the Jets and you're held back by your quarterback or held hostage by your quarterbacks by that young guy that you just won't quit.
maybe look, let's be like, if you're going to have an older veteran, and it's not just the Jets, I would say with the Rams too, with like Matt Stafford, have a in-house guy who you are sure can be a high-level backup to take over in case that guy goes down. Because I mean, we see it with the Stafford injury, we see it with the Rodgers injury. Neither of those situations was really fully prepared, and obviously betting on Josh was rough. I mean, it's been a tough haul with him. He does not appear to be a truck right now. He's definitely a trailer.
So we've talked about the Texans. I want to talk to you about the Texans. I want to talk to you about the Panthers. I want to talk to you about the Cardinals, the Bears. So somebody got to draft these quarterbacks, right? And New England looks like they're back in the market for a quarterback. At minimum, I think if nothing else to take away from this year is Mac Jones ain't that guy. And maybe not. Maybe he was just ruined beyond repair with the experiment from last year with having Matt Patricia, Joe Judge be the offensive coordinators. But here he is with the Bill O'Brien, and they don't have a great receiving core either. And it's probably bigger than Mac Jones. But you talked about trucks and trailers. He seems to be a thermometer, not a thermostat. He seems to be. Maybe he's not the problem, but he's not the solution either. So Mac Jones looks like his time is up. Is Bill Belichick the one making the pick, though? Because the thing first of all, there's a whole lot of smoke here for there not to be some fire. Tell me if I'm missing anything here, or fill in the blanks with what you know. Feels like the prudent, practical thing for Bob Kraft to do is to get compensation for him. Same way he once gave up. This whole thing comes full circle, right? Same way he once gave up to get him out of New York is to get compensation for Bill Belichick rather than just fire him now. Do not allow him to suffer the indignity, no matter how frustrating this season is, no matter how difficult he can be. He deserves better than to be fired during the season. Let him finish out the season. Right. But beyond that, it feels like the only way to do this is to clean house. I don't think there's a middle ground between keeping him and firing him, because it's not like other situations like we mentioned with the Panthers where there's a holdover GM who can hire the head coach and the head coach can redirect the organization, or vice versa, a coach that you believe in, but he just needs the right personnel man. It's like this organization, the entire DNA of this organization is Bill Belichick's. Like, you have to eradicate all things Bill Belichick if you're going to make a change. There's no half-stepping when it comes to making a change here in New England.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, replacing Bill, everybody on the football end of the operation was a Bill decision. Like, I mean, like, right. You're replacing the entire DNA of the organization. We talked about this when Shalice was on with us.
That's right. We did.
This is the DNA of the organization is Bill. So you're like changing your DNA. However, I do think that there is a half measure here. If here is my scenario that I think would work out well for the Patriots. I think you find out can you trade Bill, and where would Bill want to go, and you like, so you work on that first. Like, where, Bill, you want to continue coaching? Great, we're going to trade you. What organization are you interested in? Where's have the agents do their work and find out. And it wouldn't be agents. I think it'd be owners. That would be a Bill talking to other owners situation. That's where he is in terms of his league standing. You trade Bill, you get some compensation.
Wouldn't it be something, by the way, real quick? Sorry. Wouldn't it be something if, talking about history repeating itself, I don't see it, but every time Bill is asked about his job status. He's like, I'm just getting ready for the Colts. I'm just doing the best I can day to day. I don't see him doing a Parcells circa Super Bowl 31 and thinking about his next gig while he's on the job. I don't think he would. I don't think he could do that. I don't know that's in him to do it. Mm-hmm. So it'd be interesting to see when the conversations would start between Bill and other future employers.
Yeah, I don't think.
Sorry, but continue.
No, I think you're right. Like, it doesn't feel like. It feels like it's going to be something drawn out, right? If this happens in the off season, right? Yeah. So once the season ends, they're not going to the playoffs. So you start the process. Who knows? Weeks. Who knows how long that would take? Like,
it's the biggest domino, but it could be the last one to fall. If that makes sense.
Right.
Like,
you'd have to have a lot in place. Okay, so I would deal Bill, get some compensation from whatever franchise wants to install him as the next guy. Maybe it's Washington, right? Let's say it's Washington. They want to make a big, shake up. Be the hot rumor,
right?
Okay, so Bill's going to coach Washington. Then I think you take that draft compensation, you call Tennessee, and you go, "We want Mike Vrabel. We want to trade for Mike Vrabel. What do you need for Mike Vrabel?" And you do get an element of continuity because, number one, the owner knows Mike Vrabel, right? The family knows Mike Vrabel, has super high amount of respect for him. He came through the culture as a player, so he knows the culture and knows the part of the culture that the owner is very familiar with and likes, and the discipline and all these different things. He came through there. Bill O'Brien was his coach. When he was an assistant in Houston, Bill O'Brien, the OC, potentially stays. So there's an element of continuity there, right? Maybe other staff members stay, but you're not going to get. You're changing out a guy who knows the culture, who is similar to Belichick in other ways, but he's not Belichick. He's not on the Belichick coaching tree. People keep putting Vrabel on the Belichick coaching tree.
He doesn't have that stain on him of being one of Belichick's failed assistants.
He knows. Yeah, like, it's funny because every once in a while I'll hear people talk about Bill's coaching tree. They'll be like, "Well, what about Vrabel?" And I'm like, "Vrabel wasn't a coach for Bill. Like, he was a coach for O'Brien, and O'Brien's on the tree." Right. But I mean, come on.
Right.
So for me,
I think he should still kind of count, though. I mean, he played for Belichick. I feel like that still counts. I don't know. It's like he can have it both ways. He got just enough of Belichick. So okay. So the rule for the tree is you have to be a former Bill Belichick assistant coach who came up through the ranks. You cannot be a Bill Belichick player, although he started his career in Pittsburgh. You cannot be a Bill Belichick player and then take the long route to go take a detour to coaching. Because you're right, he came up through Houston, on that staff. But okay, all right, I'll give it to him. But go ahead. So you make the call for Vrabel, but if you're Tennessee, if you're that ownership group, you're not letting Mike Vrabel out the door for any amount of compensation, are you?
Well, I think you have to have obviously you can't engage in any of that until. If you have to know, does Mike want to be in Tennessee or not? And Mike could want to be in Tennessee, and then that just ends it, right? So if like I said, a lot of moving parts, very complicated, and for it to even happen, first and foremost, you have to know whether or not Mike Vrabel wants to continue on in Tennessee.
Right.
I will say for many coaches, and I'll use Sean Payton as an example. When Sean Payton was coaching the Saints, he had other organizations that he liked. It's possible. God. It's possible.
He had the most wandering eye.
I mean, and by the way, I'm not saying that Vrabel does, but I would say that coaches are human beings. We're all human
precedent,
beings. And we all have, let's say, in our chosen professions, if someone asked us, if you're not where you are, where else could you see yourself being? And we can all answer that question, right? And NFL coaches are no different. If you're not coaching this franchise and working with this owner, where else could you see yourself being? I don't think for Mike Vrabel, that's college. A lot of people are like, well, back up in Ohio State, if Ryan Day loses this year to Michigan and, He'll go
I
and
don't know, man. Well, listen, dog, with these buyouts, I don't know. I'd be rethinking that.
Yeah.
Like, just give me a buyout, whatever. I want a contract with a big buyout. I don't care where I'm coaching.
So, what was it for Jimbo Fisher?
$77 million? My God.
So call him Jumbo Fisher. Man, that is
I'm telling you.
that buyout's
Must be
insane.
nice.
But for me, if I'm the Patriots, that's how I look at this. I'm like, now, and again, if Vrabel is like, hey, I'm a Titan, I'm here, this is my spot, I'm happy with the owner, I'm happy with the general manager, we're cool, we're good. Then you're like, all right, when we have to resolve this some other way. But I also, the reason why I bring up Vrabel is because everybody should ask the question, like, who's going to succeed Bill Belichick? Like, really, who wants to go in there and follow that act? And
but it ain't that hard now. I mean, he's making it easy for the next person at 2-8. Like, it ain't hard now. It's the reason they're getting rid of him, because it feels like it's run its course. But here's what's fascinating about that scenario you just laid out is Vrabel different enough from Belichick, but still familiar enough to where you have the best of both worlds? Is that what you're going for? Because, but what would be the reason for that? And I guess this is what interests me about you saying that, about all the familiarity. Do you want a hard reset, or do you just, like with your iPhone, do you want a hard reset where you take the little thing and you find a little small hole that you can't really see, and it's like it just reboots everything? Or do you want to just turn the power off and on? In other words, like, I thought the idea was to change this entire thing. Like, I thought the whole thing had grown stale. Or is it, no, it's just the Krafts and Belichick. It's like, hey, let's just have a mutual parting of the ways, but we still want to kind of keep things for the most part similar to the way they've been over the last 2 decades. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Like, it's just a Kraft Belichick thing, or a Patriot way thing we're doing away with, or a Belichick way, or Brady way, as it were.
I think that there is a reality to things running their course, especially when your coach has been doing it for, 20 years, 25 years, I do think that you can make change, but also lean on someone that you trust, you're familiar with, you believe in as a coach. You think they can delegate authority, all these different things. So it's not like
history repeating itself. Kraft hired Belichick because of the relationship they had when he was there as a secondary coach under Parcells. Yeah. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And Kraft's got right. So I don't think it's just like, oh, we're going and hiring another version of Bill. I don't think that it's not really that simple. Okay. Right. I don't think Mike
that's
and
not
Bill
who Vrabel is, to your point.
No, right. No, I don't. They're not perfect. It's not you're not basically looking back in time and going and getting Bill. Right. He's just younger. No, they are different.
Or it's not a succession plan. It's not somebody that he's passing it down to. Yeah.
And Mike, for owners, especially a guy like Kraft. I mean, I think Kraft's a good owner. Okay. I think there are good owners and there are bad owners. Yeah. I think Kraft's a good owner. I think the good owners know, who do I trust? Who do I believe in? And I think there is trust and belief between he and Mike Vrabel, the way there was trust and belief with Belichick. Right. And so it's, I don't know. I think that's a lot better than this idea of just the whole hard reset, because you never know, how that's going, especially if you're going and hiring a coach that you're unfamiliar with. I think a lot of Mike Vrabel. I think Mike Vrabel's a really good coach. I think Tennessee would be crazy to let him go.
Very well regarded. Yeah.
I think Tennessee would be crazy to let him go, and I don't know that he would want to leave Tennessee in the first place. But if I am the Patriots, I am going to check.
Certainly a call you make. And I don't know if he would want to leave Tennessee for that place, because he may have too much respect for Bill and just be like, hey, you know what? I don't want to go back where I already been. I'm going to say something that you might find disrespectful, but it's how I feel sitting here today in the way the Patriots have looked, not just this year, but the last several years, and not just on the field, which is like, okay, it's one thing if it's like, oh, the GM ain't give me the right players. They don't look well coached. It's not just poorly constructed. They don't look well coached right now. And that's something I never thought I'd say about Belichick. But that's not the disrespectful part. I don't know that I want him, personally. Like, if I'm another organization, you mentioned the Commanders, what do I want with Bill Belichick? Like, no, I mean, I might have wanted Bill Belichick 5 years ago. I might have wanted him before it. Not taking anything away from him, nothing, but it just seemed like Brady meant a whole lot more than we could have even quantified. So I just don't, unless you're going back in time and you bring in Tom Brady with him, I don't want Bill Belichick if I'm another owner. Am I crazy for feeling that way? I don't know that I want him to come in, and given the way he moves and the way he operates, I get that he's the greatest coach of all time. But those 300 some odd wins ain't coming with him. That ain't got a damn thing to do with moving forward. No thanks. I'd rather somebody younger, more dynamic, more appealing. I'm not trying to win a press conference and gain credibility based off of what he did in New England. I just don't know that I want to entrust my organization to him, given that as much as he put those 6 Lombardis in the lobby in Foxborough, he's also run this damn thing into the ground the last several years. Who's to say he's not doing it to my organization, says Josh Harris, although, there's nowhere to go but up. But you understand what I'm saying? I just don't know that trading for Bill Belichick is as much of a slam dunk as it once was a few years ago, when everybody would have lined up to get Bill Belichick.
Yeah, no arguments from me. I mean, I don't know. I don't. There is the consideration of like, what is the end goal here? Like, first off, how long is Bill going to coach? Is he going to he's in his 70s? Like, what are we going to take this to his 80s? Like, how far is your horizon? If you're a team hiring him, how close are you to being complete? Right. Are you a coach away? Then maybe if you're a coach away and it's something where you're like, hey, we have a window of 4 years here, so we're going to go get Bill and turn everything over to him. Well, I don't see Bill going on to most teams and not turning the roster over because he likes a particular brand of player.
Turning the whole organization over.
The whole organization, personnel wise. Is he also going to be the general manager? I don't know. I think it's a completely fair question, and I think the Brady thing is an absolutely fair question. I mean, it's what's interesting to me is we've now seen every single person, and some players, but definitely coaches who separate themselves from Tom. We've seen what they look like, and it's not good. Like, it's all like all these assistants that left for other jobs. It didn't look good. Bill O'Brien was the closest to looking good. And even that situation in Houston, it turned into a power struggle with Rick Smith. Then it turned into a power struggle with Jack Easterby. Right. I mean, it was just, It was a mess. Right. Now we've seen Bill separated from Tom, like the great Tom, the Super Bowl winning Tom. And we've seen what Bill looks like separated from Tom. It's not good. Yeah. And I know people I wrote about this and people got pissed because I called it the Brady way. I'm like, it's not the Patriot way, it's the Brady way. But it kind of is. Like, he's the only one.
It's hard to argue. Everything changed when he became the quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the common thread.
And look at him before he became the quarterback and look at him after. It's like there's not a lot of variables. So he's the constant. Yep.
Well, and it's funny too because people will bring up Tampa and they go, well, he picked the best team and the loaded team. I'm like, well, yeah, first off, again, Brady picked it. He figured out what was the best situation. And we brought in Antonio Brown. When was the last time Antonio Brown had anything going for him? And
Rob Gronkowski,
Go watch the Super Bowl. I think they both scored touchdowns in that Super Bowl. And I'm like, it wasn't. It's what's the common thread? It's Tom. Tom picked the situation. Tom brought other guys with him. Tom was the one making him work out in the park as soon as he got there in the middle of COVID. Like, we can go ahead and say it. It's okay.
I don't think it's exclusive to Belichick though. That's why, just random, bro. Joe Gibbs just don't get enough credit. Joe Gibbs does not get enough credit for winning 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks.
Yep.
Because by and large, all of the great coaches, I'm sure if we thought long, hard enough, I mean, Landry went through a few and he was successful. He had a few. He didn't win Super Bowls with all of them, but he had a few. But by and large, all the great Shula, all the great quarterbacks, all the great coaches, I'm saying, like when it comes to their championship years, had one quarterback. And they rode that partnership and they rode that quarterback, whether it was Walsh in Montana or Seifert with Young, for that matter, in San Francisco. It's just these quarterbacks make all the difference in the world.
Shula had winning records with 6 different quarterbacks. And one of those you'll throw out, you'll say it's Scott Mitchell because it was like 1 year and Scott Mitchell and it was like an injury situation.
Yeah. Hold on, let me see if I can name him. Earl Morrall. Let me see if I can try to name him. Okay, pop quiz. Okay. Earl Morrall, Bob Greasy, Don Strock, right? Marino, obviously. Oh, I thought you knew him. Marino, obviously.
I did, but there's an outlier. There's one that I'm not going to remember right now.
Okay, all right. So you said Scott Mitchell. Who else would be in there? Because in Baltimore it would have been. Oh, well, wait. Was he there with Unitas? No, he wasn't there. Wait.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Unitas, Morrall, Marino, Strock, Mitchell, Greasy. There you go.
Did you really name them?
I think I just did.
Did you seriously?
I think I just got it. I think that's it. If he said it's 6, if you tell me it's 7, I'm screwed. But that's a great bar trivia right there. Is that it?
That is wild. That is wild. Hang on.
This day in NFL history. I was raised by Steve Sable, dog.
Extremely impressed by that. If you actually just pulled that off. Okay, here we go.
But I mean, there are exceptions. So I'm glad you called that. Nope, that's not it.
Strock is not correct.
He did not have a winning record, or he was not his quarterback. Wasn't it his quarterback?
He was not his quarterback.
Didn't Don Strock play for the Dolphins?
David Woodley.
David Woodley.
He had 3 years.
Did Don Strock play for Miami? Am I tripping? Who did Don Strock play for?
11-4, 7-2 with Woodley.
Who did Strock play for? Why do I have that name in my head?
Hang on.
Oh, okay. This is fun.
I'm gonna double check and make sure that he didn't. I
wonder who Don Strock played for. Why do I have Miami in my head? Yeah, David Woodley. You're right.
No, you're right. Strock did. He just didn't. He didn't start a ton of games. He did. Okay. He did start some. But he didn't start like the most games he ever started for Shula was 7 games. This is a terrible podcast. What are you doing, man?
This is great. This is live. This is live.
All these people that
we'll do it live.
People are like, what the hell?
Like, who are these people? Who are you even talking about?
Digging through Football Reference, trying to find.
But the point is there though. Like, Shula had winning records with 6 quarterbacks. I mentioned Gibbs winning Super Bowls with 3. They just make all the difference in the world. It's just you cannot separate. It's very hard to separate Bill Belichick and his success from Tom Brady, but no different than a lot of the great quarterbacks and head coach pairings throughout NFL history. It's just which goes back to the conversation we were having earlier. It's like quarterbacks need good circumstances, but teams have to find elite quarterbacks if they're going to contend for championships. There's really no way around either one of them. All right, Charles, I appreciate you, man. That was fun. Walking down trivia memory lane.
Hopefully, hopefully the producers can cut a lot of that. That was a long period of
no. More than that. No, don't cut it, because anybody who makes it to the end of this conversation, God bless you. I love you. Yeah. Thank you. You know what I'm saying? Like, they make it to the end, then I'll take it.
They're the real ones.
If they're the real ones, right? If at this point they decide to check out, then we're all right. You know what I mean? The end of an hour, then we did okay. All right, man. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, later, man.
Hey, thanks so much for kicking it with your main man, Michael Smith. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, but also subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, tell your friends about it. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media.